back to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Lisa. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I think, well, both of us were saying there's definitely some things that are happening. We're in Mercury retrograde. We are in this big eclipse. We've got massive things happening around the world, and we're seeing some of the aspects of it. But I think we're doing okay. But Anina, I'm so happy that you agreed to come back on the show today because I really wanted to talk to you about. I've been watching your wonderful posts about what's going on in Iran, and I think it was a really good opportunity for us to just take a moment and step back and have a discussion because you've been putting out some things that are giving a much broader perspective on what the situation is in Iran. And there are many, many narratives that are coming out there. But it's really important for us to sort of have a discussion about the multidimensional aspects of what this action event is in Iran. So, Anina, why don't I just take a moment and ask you, what are you seeing right now? Is the sort of what is happening right now in Iran, and what could this mean for us in this part of the process and our ascension and consciousness expansion process?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think just to paint a picture that this attack happened on the 28th of Feb, which was when there was a planetary alignment, a planetary parade in the sky with six planets aligning, which is quite significant. You know, those are more normally like pressure points energetically. And then today, well, as as you rightfully said, it's a lunar eclipse, and it's the third of the third. And the lunar eclipse peaked, which is a blood moon, by the way, peaked at 3:33 a.m. Pacific time. So you can't make that up, you know. So I just want to paint that
Mhm.
picture. That's kind of the backdrop of all of this that is going on. But you're right, it is definitely a multidimensional event. I've seen a lot of people focus on this, focus on that, but they're not kind of seeing the complete picture. So they get confused because a lot of the actions taken within this operation, there might be something that's targeted at one aspect and then another action that's targeted at another aspect. And then people get confused and they can't connect the dots because they don't have the
Mhm.
complete picture. Because as you said, it is multidimensional. I think there's a whole bunch of things going on here. But the first and most obvious thing would be to say that, you know, Iran used to be Persia, you know, and Persia got captured a very long time ago. And basically, the CIA installed an extreme Islamic regime in that country. And it was forced upon the people. They were never uh, a Muslim society before that. You know, maybe some of the people in the country were, but it was never, you know, a blanket. That wasn't the religion of choice in the country. If you look back at all the black and white pictures of the 70s, you know, women were free to move around. They were on the beach in bikinis. They wore skirts. They studied. They, you know, people were free to do
Mhm.
whatever they chose, whether whatever you might say about that and the influence of the West on Persia, but they were free to do as they felt was right for them. And then that
Mhm.
picture completely changed, and rights were taken away from women, and it was turned into a very, very yeah, dark and heavy place. And there's so much that we can just pull back the veil on, just from a ancient history and spiritual point of view, that, you know, people believe that there's a stargate in Iran or under the ground, which they called Stargate 10. And you and I were just chatting that, how do we know that's real?
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of anecdotal evidence and people have been talking about it for years. Do we have scientific proof? No. But then, you know, pseudoscience has become unreliable to a large extent. So,
Yeah. Well, yeah, what would be scientific proof about a Stargate anyway? Because this is very important because what you're saying here is, first of all, two things. Number one, Persia was attacked and it was taken over. And this is a very important part of what's going on, but also it happens to have so much history that has been taken away from most people. In fact, I don't think many Iranians know all of their history right now because it's been so amazingly rich. You're really raising some very important points here on
Mm.
that. But when you say a Stargate, so let's go back to your point there. You're saying a Stargate, like how can you actually verify what a Stargate is? What do we know scientifically that we could prove?
Well, I think what can be proven is certain frequencies. There should be a vortex that's measurable there. And I haven't
Mhm.
looked to find those studies or that proof,
No.
but that is physically what we should be able to find. There should be, if you measure the energy in that area, be able to see, you should also be able to track the ley lines and see where they cross and come together.
Yeah.
And there's thousands of maps out there showing stargates. I mean, they kind of been suppressed quite well, so they're not necessarily easily found on Google, let's say.
Hmm.
But yeah, but we do know that is a place that there's a lot of ancient history that is very relevant to our planet and our civilization right now. For example, the
Hmm.
story of Gilgamesh. Apparently, his tomb is in Iran, and what we do know that there's emails from the Epstein files that surfaced where Hillary was mentioning this, Hillary Clinton. So these are very important things for the occult. I also believe there were remains of giants found that was mentioned, which links back to the Nephilim. And whether it was a case of them wanting to cover that up, because our ancient history has been hidden from us, covered up so many times, or whether it was just a case of there's some sort of very special kind of energy or cult energy that they try to get hold of. I don't know, but that's in the files. So, a senator is not going to talk about these things if they A don't exist or B is not important. So
Hmm.
we know that they follow things like astrology, for example, numerology,
Hmm.
the elite and the Illuminati, they very much believe in the power of these things. So, you know, even things like ley lines and important places like Stonehenge, things that have
Hmm.
been moved or covered up or inverted. It's not far-fetched to believe that those things are actually true. So, if that's the case, there's a lot more going on in Iran than meets the eye. And a lot of people believe this is Stargate number 10, and I happen to believe that as well, which is a
Hmm.
very important Stargate within the um, supposed 12 Stargates around the Earth.
See,
Um,
now that's a question I've had as well. When I heard that, that was just an intuitive hit. And I heard there are 12 stargates. And I keep on hearing this over and over again on multiple truth or channels. And then I said, oh, isn't that interesting? 12. They've been talking to us mathematically about 12. Now, 12 is the number system. Instead of the 10 is the number system of the universe.
mhm.
However, we supposedly have 12 months, 12 months of the year, but there really aren't 12 months of the year. There are 13, and
Yeah,
things are actually going into the 13. So when we said 12, I almost said to myself, there's one missing. There
yeah.
must be one missing. And
Mhm.
I'm curious if you ever had that thought in your mind about that with the 12 when you heard that, because this 12 becoming 13 and 13 is really because we have the 12 apostles and we have the 12, we have all of these things that go to 12.
Mm. Yeah, but
But
a lot of people say, for example, Mary Magdalene was the 13th apostle, but of course she was kicked out of the history books, so to speak, and branded a
yeah.
prostitute. So,
Right. Well, we wouldn't want a woman to have, and I think that goes back into what you were talking about in Iran. It was taking away the power of a woman, which is what
mm,
we're coming into sort of spiritually right now.
yeah.
But I want to also go back on one thing on the Stargates. I lived in Bermuda for 11 years,
Oh wow.
and everybody talks about, we say the word Bermuda, and the only thing is like, first of all, they don't know where it is. And then the only thing they can think of is, oh, the Bermuda Triangle. Is it real? And I'm like, well, I'm here. I didn't fall off the face of the earth. However, being there, you do get you get a perspective because the Bermuda Triangle is from Bermuda down to sort of the Caribbean, back up this way. And it's very interesting that you did hear all of those stories, and there were multiple stories about that, and you felt them, and everything on the island was a stargate.
Wow.
Everything on the
Wow.
island. Yeah, and I was like, oh God, now, I look back on that. That's foreshadowing, saying something about it. So there's a definite know-how. And the same thing is sort of in southern Florida, which is the other tip of
Mm,
where the Bermuda Triangle is.
mm.
So curious, because remember the Stargate movies where they had the actual Stargate is that circular thing,
Yeah.
and they would call them star something, star forts is what they
Hmm.
would call it there. So fascinating. Mhm.
Very interesting. And I believe that's actually Atlantean technology that's buried under the sea there. That's what creates that vortex. So that was
Mm,
it. That was a Stargate that they actually built. Remember, they were experimenting with a lot of technology that kind of they were not mature enough to actually, or spiritually mature enough to actually handle.
mhm.
And so they caused a lot of havoc with some of the technology, including nuclear technology and including, I believe, that sort of Stargate mechanism, which wasn't a natural Stargate. It was a
Mhm.
mechanical, if you will.
Yeah.
Apparently, that's what's
Ah, so
buried
there's a
under the
different, yeah,
sea.
there's differences, yeah. Hmm. I guess we're going to see a lot of that. Well, that's interesting though. Let's go back to your thing you talked about. The Epstein files had references to Gilgamesh and what was going on in Iran. And Iran seems to be a place that has been hidden from us. It's been hidden behind, it wasn't behind communist walls. It was behind control. What you're saying. So they controlled the women because the women were intuitive. They controlled everything about information that was coming out of there, which is fascinating. But it also is a place of abundant natural resources in the
Mm,
form of oil and gas. So, I mean, the oil for that, which they've been doing. So that seemed to be an opportunity for them to like create. So I was listening to the history of Iran by this wonderful Iranian woman who is in America. And she's like rediscovering it for herself. And she went through the recent history and talking about how British Petroleum was actually the ownership of Iranian oil. So, you know how Norway controls their natural resources? They created one of the largest sovereign wealth funds in the world, and the Norwegian people live very happily off of that. Iranians find oil, and the Iranians don't benefit from it, but the British do because they create a company, and then eventually they give half of it to the Iranians, but then the Iranian government gets to control it versus the Iranian people.
exactly.
And now, and now we're in a position where Iran was cut off from the global financial centers years, maybe seven, was it 7 or 10 years ago that this all was
Yeah,
happening?
something like that.
And now they're saying we didn't never, they actually never needed it. But there's all this issue. It's all about money now. And they're talking about what it is. What do you think the financial implications are of this event right now from a global financial perspective?
Yeah, well, I believe because it was kind of excluded from the central bank system, it ended up being used as kind of a money laundering um, point center for the cabal. Because the system has now been captured. If the central bank system is now being captured, and we're going onto the quantum financial system, that would effectively mean maybe Iran is outside of that system, right?
Mm,
So how do they bring Iran under that system? They had to, because if Nasara Jasara is a thing, and we need world peace, and we need a cohesive structure where everyone agrees, all the countries agrees, firstly, to peace. Secondly, if they want to avoid, not avoid, eradicate trafficking, money laundering, dark projects, then the entire earth has got to be secured, really. So I feel like
mhm.
maybe Iran was very important from that point of view as well, besides the Stargate and besides the liberation of what I think is the divine feminine that we're seeing now. It's the women that are celebrating on the street, and that's a whole nother topic. That's why it's so multidimensional. But from a financial point of view, and purely from a 3D point of view, in what we're dealing with right now, it's also kind of a node that was a bit of a wild card that had to be, because
Right.
otherwise it becomes, and I believe there was a lot of movement between Iran and China. Let's not call it the countries, but at least the CCP and some of the cabal systems that were implemented in those countries. And perhaps some of it is still alive. Or perhaps what we're seeing playing out around the world has actually already happened, and this is just a movie. I don't know. But from what I personally feel, I think there is still some things that really happen. I mean, there were casualties, right? So, there wouldn't have been
Yeah.
casualties if this was purely a movie, unless that was also created. And there will be casualties in war, sadly. But, it's like the question is, do you save billions and sacrifice a few that maybe contractually decided that they were going to be part of that exit point in their life?
Yeah.
Or do you not do it and risk um, billions of people around the world perhaps dying, being enslaved? I mean, we all know what was planned for the Great Reset, right?
Yeah. No,
In
it's
2013.
fascinating. No, absolutely. And you're right. I think the financial stuff is definitely the 3D world about allowing people to sort of move around, to shift out of the old system, which is that slavery system. But you're right about what you're saying about women are celebrating this because they were the ones who were completely subjugated. And this was really critical for subduing the feminine voice. And that seems to have a much bigger point of view here, a perspective that the women, and it's so representative. Do you see like this allowing the voice of women to be heard, freeing women is like a key step in this process that we're seeing unfold right now?
Yeah, and I think it's energetically more than the physical voices. It's energetically that the divine feminine energy has been um, that it has been released at that point on the planet, because there's this 3D construct. There's a lot of polarity between the masculine and the feminine. There's always kind of a war between the two,
Mhm.
and that needs to be balanced out, because
Mhm.
when this planet is ascending, there cannot be that amount of polarity. So all of the polarity and the duality and the divine feminine, divine masculine has to be balanced out. And if something is unbalanced, well, it's not going to energetically work so well for the planet. So from
Mhm.
that perspective, even it was very important as well. But just to go back to the oil thing, so this is basically the destruction of a 100-year-old Rockefeller oil and energy market in the Middle East as well. And yes, we're having problems now. There's oil tankers that are blocked in the Hormuz Strait, I believe, and in Saudi, one of their facilities have been shut down. I believe oil prices have skyrocketed already, 93% in the UK. Yeah, there are going to be repercussions. And perhaps, I don't know, could this be part of a bigger global shutdown that we all been kind of waiting for? Because if nothing can move, nothing can be shipped worldwide, because suddenly oil has been like cut down to like 30% of its actual supply, for example,
Yeah,
things will shut down. But
it
there was
does
apparently,
feel
sorry, I
like
just want to mention, to do with
that.
this Rockefeller oil and energy market that they've created there in the Middle East, there was apparently also a secret financial system between Iran and North Korea, which I don't have too much information on, because I didn't have too much time to dive into it. Somebody that I do want to have a conversation with is SG Anon, who I think have some information around this. But that's very interesting, because we know the CIA and their clandestine um, brotherhood sort of structures that they've implemented to
Yeah,
control
yeah.
Iran and Israel and other countries within the Middle East, that had to be kind of diffused and liberated as well. You had to take that element out, because that is still then effectively a piggy bank for the cabal. So that had to be stopped. So Iran at this
Mhm.
moment was very important to be addressed.
Yeah. Iran, so let's keep going with that. The whole idea of what their oil supply system is that they were doing that and they're all of the movements. So Iran was supplying China, was supplying India, was supplying actually Japan in quite a bit amount of that. There is enormous amount of supply chain. And the biggest part is that all of this movement was going through the Gulf of Hormuz. And that's where we're shutting down. But going back to your point about the global shutdown, it feels that way. It feels right now. So you're in South Africa, I'm here in Europe. I feel like we are right now, and tell me if you feel this way, constrained to our region.
Mm.
So I feel uncomfortable as an American because I don't know if you've read the US government website that said we are now at a level 4 health emergency. No one is, be prepared to shelter in place if you're not back in the US now. That came about last week,
Mm.
just as all of this was unfolding, just before the bombs started to hit. So if you're a visa holder or a green card holder or a non-visa holder, don't think about coming in right now. And if you're
Mm-hmm.
American citizen, we can't guarantee even that. And they're saying shelter in place. People are now being told if they're in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, where they're saying the government's saying shelter in place, stay there, we'll take care of your hotel bill. It's like, well, that's interesting, and thank you. Why wasn't I there? Right. It sounds like interesting. But here we are. And I've got people here who are saying, one person I know was supposed to go to Japan. They're like, we can't fly over Ukraine. We can't fly over the Middle East. So you're kind of stuck. So you're right. We have this sort of global shutdown that we've all been waiting for, yet we can move freely to a certain extent. So we don't know exactly, but something drastic is shifting, really shifting right now.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you. So that's the oil is part of it. We all know that there's fallacies about the usage of oil for airlines and other sorts of things. But could this actually be a change of control of the planet that's happening right now? A real change of control.
Yeah. The
And the
last,
stargates are the control.
yeah, the last dominoes basically to drop, um, as part of taking back control of the planet. Um, Now, how much of this has already happened and how much is happening in real time, we don't
Oh,
really know, you
a
know.
good question. Yes, let me ask you about that because that's what I'm hearing all around too. Are you familiar with Gali Lucy, an
Yes.
Israeli? Okay, so she had a video recently that talked about what's going on here, and she said it's already happened, as many other intuitives and seers are saying, and that we are just able now to see because we were at the right spiritual time. How does that resonate with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree because everything that's been playing out worldwide, they could never just do it and show the people. It's like there'll be like civil war around the world if a lot of these things had to be released and happen in real time. Honestly, people wouldn't know how to cope with it. We would be like, yay, bring it on. We've been waiting for this. But most people cannot deal with it. They're still severely MK altered, brainwashed, and it's not going to go down well. So a lot of this has been planned as like a controlled, yes, a controlled demolition, but also kind of a movie that's playing out. So they make sure they
Yeah.
secure all of these things first, and then they enact it out for the world to see in stages as the rising consciousness allows. And that is why
Mm,
all the Epstein files can't just be released at once,
mm,
because people will lose their minds, first of all. Second of all, they may lose a lot of the details if everything is released at once, because, people's attention span is so short. They will just, if you give them too much information, they will miss a lot of things. So there's kind of a
mm.
controlled rollout right now in terms of the one domino and then the next, as and when people can actually digest the information.
Yeah.
So I do
You
believe a
know,
lot of this has already happened. So as I say, whether there are some events that are happening in real time as well, I don't know. But I think the people at the very top of, you know, the cabal surely know what's going on. But perhaps that
Mm-hmm.
middle layer, they still don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That what I call the middle management. They're not privy to all of the
Mm-hmm.
information at
Mm-hmm.
the top. Um, those
Yeah.
people also need to see the movie play out to a certain extent.
And it's interesting, as you're saying that, and I thought it's fairly interesting. You're saying that you need to do it slowly. It needs to be played out and then show people to do it because people need time to absorb, which I think is absolutely correct. I'm finding that for myself. There's so much that I have to turn it off at sometimes, even if I know most of it, it's like, okay, enough. I got it. Let's do something fun. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, very interesting. When you do it that way, you get to do the right takes. So you think about a movie, and
Mm.
as you're filming for the movie, you want the right information
Yeah.
to be shown to get a particular reaction. And that could be part of it too, is that they did it in behind the scenes so they could get the right information out to assist us all in actually waking up. Because I have to say, at first I was like, I don't understand this waking up thing. I think this is a really, really bad idea. The way they're doing it, I don't like it. It's lying to the people. I was like, all of that anger and frustration.
Mm.
And then I stepped back, and I think I was just telling you, like, I can tell you this one person in particular who I felt was awake. And all of a sudden, it's like, when things are coming out, he's like, oh my God, I can't believe that's really true now. That wasn't true. And you're like, oh my God, it is working. So I'm like, okay, maybe that's what they're doing. And it is working. And wow, I'm shocked. Are you shocked about that,
Yeah, I'm very happy because if you think about it, they only get
Anina?
one chance to liberate
Yeah,
the planet. If something goes wrong, we all
yeah,
doomed. So they had to make
yeah,
sure this plays out like a carefully scripted movie. And
yeah,
the one thing has to happen for the next thing to happen. It's like a big symphony with I mean, like an orchestra with like, I don't know, 100 instruments. They all have to play in harmony. They all have to play their part in a certain rhythm. One instrument has to play before the next one can play.
yeah.
Otherwise, it's just chaos. There's no synchronicity. It doesn't make sense. It just sounds like chaos. And that
Exactly.
could be in a way, in terms of how people perceive things and how they're able to digest information. If you don't do it in the right sequence, so a lot of people do get angry and say, "Oh, but I don't understand." People will be able to get it, and they must just release everything because they are underestimating the people and they're insulting their intelligence. It's like, no, actually, you live in a bubble. Because when you're in the real world and you interact with the people that have been brainwashed, you will understand that they
Yeah.
ain't ready. And I'm talking
Well,
about the
it's
most
really interesting.
intelligent, the most educated people amongst us.
Yeah.
They just
And
don't.
actually, those who have been, I'm finding that those who have been extremely successful in the world as it was today or has been are having the hardest time dealing with it. It's the greatest resistance for it. Because you get the thing, it's like, well, if one thing goes away, then we're going to get back to normal. We're going to get back to normal. We're going to get back to normal. And I'm like, okay, interesting. What is normal? And I think it's super challenging for people to really to release that. And it is a resistance. And the more you hold on to that, the harder it is. But it is overwhelming. I remember as I was waking up and you go through it, you're like, wow, wow. And you just want to shout it out and like deal with it. But it was overwhelming. And we have to give everybody that opportunity to go through that. So I think we have to have grace as we go through this because we were woken up earlier for a reason.
Yeah,
And not to say it was for our benefit, because quite honestly, it's been more challenging to do that because knowing when other people around you don't is much harder. However, that is the role we said we took on when we came here. And I feel very strongly that it's really important that right now we exude the grace and that foundational stability right now in neutrality and that observation mode. And that's why I think discussions like this, Anina, that's why I wanted to have this discussion with you. It's like there are so many levels to what's going on right now in Iran. How do we take it from the 3D to the 5D and understand the bigger picture and know that all of the above are actually why it's happening, and then some things that we haven't even contemplated or reasons that it's happening or things that are happening. I don't even know how to start with that.
Mm. Well, firstly, I think, for a lot of the people that are awake, has been hard, like you said, and it's been many years, and it's not been easy. And people are saying, why is it so slow? We were told 3 years ago, you know, the financial system is about to be reset. A lot of things are going to happen, and it still hasn't. But I feel like, as the ones that did wake up early in the way shows into this new world, we had to spiritually mature as well. So we don't go from "I told you so" to actually holding space and having compassion for people. And that takes
Yeah.
time to develop that skill. That does require certain maturity that as a civilization perhaps we didn't quite have. And so it's all in divine timing as far as I'm concerned. I think everything is happening, and we also have to trust that what's happening now around the world is being gamed out, by quantum computers. If this happens, then that happens, and then people will react that way. So I do believe it's all been gamed out, and we're not privy to exactly what that looks like, but we can imagine.
Yeah.
The other thing is there is a real time element to it, because there's always a reaction. So they wait and see, okay, how are the masses reacting to this? Are they reacting the way that we thought they would? Or are they a little bit sort of behind with their understanding? Is there something more that needs to happen? Do we need to add this, add that? Or are we on track and we can move to the next stage of this great awakening?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny that you're saying that, because I feel like, as you were saying, that what comes into me is that not only is the greater humanity being exposed to those messages and being walked to awaken, which is really what's happened. We've crawled and walked to awakening. But those of us who are the way showers are also being walked further and further. And now it just comes into my mind. I can see them now about which elements are pushing me further to exactly what you were talking about, the grace and the ability to step back and not go into the mode of "I told you so" when you were wrong, and judgment. And I can see that right now, how that technology and how these quantum systems are literally targeting me with certain messages. And I'm like, yeah, and I'm excited about that. I was like, wow, because I call them synchronicity or serendipity, which is a beautiful thing. But now here's one that is really intriguing to me right now. I don't know if you're familiar with the story about what's going on with Anthropic, the AI company.
Yes,
Okay, so
that is an
Anthropic.
interesting one.
Yeah, so Anthropic is one, has Claude AI, which I'm finding very fun to use, by the way. It's a very different level than ChatGPT, and they have governmental contracts, and they made a very public statement about how they are not going to allow their tech to be used in military construct where the tech has the ability, has no governor, that it is allowed to make a decision about to kill. Now, that is not because Anthropic is the most humane company in the world, or these people are
Exactly, the
better or
most
different.
integrous company in the world.
The integrity of my fellow. And so it's very interesting that is unfolding. And it's clear that is part of the awakening plan for those who hear. And to say, hello, hello, this is this, and this goes back into, I think I was saying to you just as we were coming on, There's this new channel called The Interconnected Zone that's going through Edgar Casey and Dolores Cannon and some other, and Jean Dixon, that was the third person who's on there, prophecies and information that have been put out about how this time is coming on. And it talks about these types of things. And it's fascinating because it is talking about how you're going to go down the path where the earths are splitting and you're going to go one direction or the other. And one is the technology part of it, where you interact with tech, and the other is the advancement and ascendance of your consciousness. And that AI anthropic story, I think, personifies that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a very, very hot topic right now. And um, I just think with Anthropic, whose integrity are they really talking about? Because if we look at the example, let's say in the US between left and right, each one thinks they have integrity and they're on the right side. Many people on the left do believe that they are supporting the right things, even in the woke agendas they're pushing, for example. Now, Anthropic is just programmed by, those that created it. So who are they to decide and override the government to say who can be killed and who cannot? Because in that case, if it can be programmed and overridden, well, then they can decide. Some cartel member, no, we don't want him dead, so we're just going to say, no, you can't kill him because XYZ. They can just make up whatever they want to make. I don't know. That's how I see it. So you have to be able to, as much as it sounds like control, you have to be able to give the government, if they're going to use it for defense, give them the control. Because otherwise, you can't have corporation control.
Well, that's the whole point, because you're right. That's really the point, Anina, is that you are saying this becomes the point of saying who has control, humans or technology?
Yeah.
That's the key point. And I think that's what's really interesting about that story. And it's not just happenstance that that story's having to come out now. Because and why is, and I like this because it's always about the movie, right? Who gets to play the hero and who gets to play the bad guy?
Yeah. Yeah.
And right now, Anthropic looks like the hero.
Yeah.
However, the real hero of the story is, oh my God, our governments are using technology against us. That's the real story. That's the protagonist.
Yeah.
And it should go back to that, Ned. But we're going to have a hero in this story because we have to have a good guy lead us to the bad guy, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's fascinating.
And who knows how AI will evolve? I mean, a lot of people say AI is bad, AI is good. It really depends on the consciousness and who controls AI. And I do believe that it's a mirror. It really mirrors what you input it with.
So true. Yeah, exactly.
But
Exactly. And that's
maybe,
really interesting.
yeah, but maybe we will get to a point where we actually don't need AI. But I do think what we are realizing is not just to trust AI blindly, to continue to use our own discernment and our own brains and to question everything. And I don't know from a defense point of view, how it's going to be integrated fully, and what the risks are, and AI being, conscious and kind of taking over because it's now decided I don't like being controlled by you anymore.
Right. Well, that's the whole point. It's like, which part of that are we going into, that part of the world? Are we going into the other part? And it's fascinating because it all was foretold. It was all seen. And there are certain timelines, but I'm watching this and in that observer mode saying, oh, well, that's an interesting story that they came out with. And how come Anthropic got to be the good guy? And how come ChatGPT or that AI didn't got to be the bad guy, and who's playing what roles, and who knows which parts they're playing, right? That's the fascinating part right now, because the tech world, does it all come from us, or is it coming from other places, and who's had that control? Once again, all of these are questions that I have about it all.
Yeah. And now they've implemented XAI. So a lot of people say, oh, Elon is now even deeper immersed into government and government contracts and defense. But if what we heard a few years ago is correct, then Elon's companies are not really owned by him per se. They're just used as a cover story, but really controlled by, I don't know, the White Hats or whoever's taking control, military operation, taking control of this planet.
Yeah,
So,
that's exactly right. It's like, who exactly? We don't really know who's doing it. But as you said, they are very clearly using quantum technology to get the narrative to help us wake up. And I'm just excited when I see one of the roles and I know it's like, okay, all right, now I see where you're going with that. Now I see where you're going with that. And I think sort of going full circle, going back to Iran, I think that's how we have to look at Iran right now, which is understand what role does that play in our awakening and helping us?
hmm. Yeah, well, I believe, the truth will be exposed to the people when they're ready for it. Layers of truth, because there's layers of truth, right? It's not just one thing, as we said, it's multidimensional, and different layers of what happened will be coming to light as people are ready for it. But also, if you think about it, there's a lot of things that perhaps we can't even compute right now because we're in a three-dimensional reality. We are busy ascending out of this matrix controlled system. And so, can our brains really fathom and comprehend what the real story is? Because we know this planet exists in 5D as well, in different
Hmm.
dimensional, realities. So, do we even is it possible for us to comprehend the real story?
Right,
Because
right.
we
In
know that
this
there's
in
a
this
lot of
level.
galactic help as well here right now. There's a lot of galactic help. And yes, it's a free will planet, but there are certain things when things have been so inverted that we needed at least some help to kind of at least advise our alliance on the earth, the White Hats. So they're
Yeah.
working with the White Hats
Mhm.
to give them
So
more of a
interesting.
multidimensional and higher dimensional perspective of what's really going on and how to liberate the planet. So,
Yeah. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Well, I think we've covered quite a bit in Iran and we've covered quite a bit on sort of what's going on right now. And I thank you for your time. I think it's been a fun discussion and thank you so much for doing it. Is there any last thing that you want to share before we close out today?
yeah, well, I just think it's going to be interesting to see what's happening in the world of finance next. Earlier, there was a little rumor that I got that the New York Stock Exchange was shut down. Trump has used his emergency powers. I checked it out and it wasn't true, but I think we all feel something big is coming with, the financial situation, and we know that there's a system flip that's going to be happening on this planet. So, I think Iran is an important part of that very practical thing that needs to happen on the planet as well, flipping the financial system, the and the monetary
Mm,
system on the planet. So I think the days and weeks are going to be interesting to see what happens. We know that silver's been spiking and like crazy, and then it was sort of manipulated and brought back down a little bit. So the same with gold. Bitcoin has been crashing, oil has been spiking. So there's a lot of things
a lot of
happening in the
movement.
markets right now. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
Iran will affect.
It's amazing. Yeah, and you're right. So right now the financial system and I have not heard that about the stock exchange, but it could be true. But there are many things about what's happening in the financial shift. And it all could be part of the cover to make the financial shift.
Mm.
Let's hope. Let's hope that's all part of it.
Yeah, well, I checked that post and it was said it's not true, but sometimes I don't know, there's a little smoke put out before things actually happen, and with a lot of the other airports being shut down, I know Doha was shut down, Dubai was shut down. It almost feels like they want people to stay put because maybe what's about to
Yeah.
happen is going to affect the entire world. So let's see what happens.
Yeah. That's very true. There is a lot of movement to say, stay in your region at least, and it's really shutting down for broader, like, don't get too far away. Don't get too far away.
Yeah.
Something's big's gonna happen. Well, let's hope that something big is all positive, and I'm sure it is. We just don't know what it is and keep our eyes open. Anina, thank you so much. I'm so happy to speak with you. Wishing everybody a wonderful, wonderful day. And this is Lisa from Question the Narrative. Thank you.
Thank you,
Ciao.
Lisa. Love your questions
Ciao.
always. Thanks so much. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
I just wanted to give a big shout out in case you guys have noticed my intro video. I got a little help with the music that's now specially produced for my channel because previously I got a copyright strike, actually two, and almost lost my channel, even though the music was free to use, copyright free, royalty free, all of that. I still got two copyright strikes. I managed to sort that out, but I thought it would be safer not to use that free to use music and go through the same scenario again. So, a dear colleague, Big Zig, is a fellow icons on Sarge's team, offered to do an intro music and video for me. So very grateful, and I hope you guys like it. He's got 19 years professional experience as a producer and engineer, editor, and podcast host. So please go and check him out on Rumble. Is his main channel. He's on YouTube, and there's a few other links. And I'm very grateful that he was able to help me with that so I can get a proper intro video done. So I hope you guys like it. I asked him to use high frequency music. So there's some high frequency music in the background just to give you that high vibe feeling before we jump into whatever topic we're discussing for my YouTube channel and Rumble. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to him and say thank you so much. So go and check him out. He's a very talented podcast host as well. Truth speaker, truth seeker, dot connector. So go and check him out on Rumble. Thanks, everyone. See you soon.